Shalom. I'm Rabbi Josh Caruso from Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. Honored to be here today to escort Larry Kroll to his final resting place. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. A time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for birthing, a time for dying, a time for speaking, a time for silence, a time for seeking, a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Larry's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you to join with me now in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The Torah are 5 books of Moses. It's a blueprint that primarily carries with it the impressions of God's handiwork, and the ones that God leaves on the world. In the Torah, it is commonplace for things to be created for us, with God as the prime mover in chief. But in this week's portion, Terumah, the prime moving is done by the people. God says to Moses, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts from every person whose heart is moved." I read recently that if you want people to value something, get them to participate in creating it. The effort we put into relationships changes people, and it changes us. The greater the labor, the greater the love for what we have created. Larry Kroll created something that became beautiful and loving and lasting for the length of his days. He built the Mishkan, a tabernacle of peace, in which he and all of his family would dwell. Where there was love, he created more love. He sewed connections between siblings and cousins and grandchildren and partners and friends that would only grow stronger and stronger as the years continued. Larry was the guy who modeled what it meant to give, and to give some more. And that's why we're feeling such great loss today, because of all that he gave. He in many ways was the glue for so many people, bringing them together, fostering connection, nurturing relationships that will certainly endure. But in some ways it's hard to believe that he's gone, because he was such a force of life. True, his body may be gone, but his spirit is here. His spirit is now lived through those who remain. And today, I know members of the Goldberg family and the Kroll family, Mitch himself. I'm sure his grandchildren first, though, would like to share some words. So we're first going to invite Bradley, and Todd, and Rob to share some words about their Papa and Nene.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. My name is Robert Goldberg. I was one of Larry's 6 grandchildren. I wrote a couple of short messages thanking and addressing some of the things I will take with me for the rest of my life. Dear Papa, thank you for always being there, not only for your kids, but for all 6 grandchildren. Some of the most vivid memories come from winters in Florida with the whole family. Not only did you create lifelong memories, you molded our family into one. Dear Papa, thanks for showing us what it was like to see true love and marriage between husband and wife. You and Nana ended together for over 60 years until the last day. Dear Papa, I can still hearing you cheering from the stands at every single game, concert, play, and the countless things we all did. Everybody in the crowd knew you were there. You and Nene have multiple loudest fans in the stands trophies. Dear Papa, thanks for stealing Nene away from all 3 of her college boyfriends. From what she tells us, all 3 of them asked to marry her in the same week. Dear Papa, a final thanks for staying alive for over 83 years, as many people don't even get to meet their grandfather. I will be forever grateful for your empowering presence in my life. Rest in peace.
Roxana, Marika, and Griffin are like to share some words about their Poppy and Ami.
I'm Marika, Mitch's daughter, and my grandpa, or Poppy as I called him, was one of my favorite people. He was an amazing mixture of kind, stubborn, witty, calm, creative, fun, vibrant, and easygoing. Some of my best memories include him teaching my husband that saying yes, dear, is the safest response to anything, learning to play canasta, going on Poppy's special days. But some of my most loved memories are from watching his joy of seeing others accomplish their dreams, like when my cousin played on the Chicago White Sox and the Israeli baseball team, watching my sister act in her many films, watching my husband graduate from college, learning about everything my dad has built at Findaway, and the list goes on. I love spending time with him because I knew he never wanted to be anywhere else except for in that moment. There's a quote, "It's good to be loved but profound to be understood," and my grandpa is someone who truly understood and loved me. I will miss him.
Hey everyone, my name is Adam. Roxanne and I have been together for about 7 years, which means that Larry has been my Poppy for about 5 years. And he did everything that he could from the moment that I met him to make me feel like a grandkid, and I do. As tough as today is, something that my mind keeps circling back to is the connection that I had with him. A connection that is similar to, I'm sure, many of you also have with him and have shared with him, but how strong that connection was after only 5 years. Seeing the rest of the grandkids come up and speak, and everyone standing up here behind me, and knowing that they grew up with Poppy as their Poppy for as long as they did, is something that I find a lot of joy in and keep thinking about on a day like today. And not only the grandkids, but Mitch and Marla as well, them having someone like Larry to teach them how to do life, to teach them how to be a person, not just any person, but a person who is good and who loves and who values goodness, is just a very special thought in my mind. And I know that all of that is true. I know it has to be true, because those are just some of the things that he's taught me in the 5 years, the mere 5 years that I knew him as Poppy. And for those 5 years as a grandkid, I just wanted to say thank you, Pops.
For those of you who don't know, my name is Griffin, and Larry Kroll was, in fact, my grandpappy. He was very, very admirable man. He knew exactly how to keep everyone around him confident, as he always kept himself confident. And he always, every time I saw him, said that I was the best. Right now, I want to take this opportunity here to say that he was the best in the form of something that I wrote for him yesterday. You keep on living. In life, you give and you receive. In love, you stay young. In truth, you have belief. Only by giving, loving, and living, that's when you truly live. You're hurt, so you must recover. Go sit in the dark and find the light on the inner. It's better than being burned by the sun or buried under the ocean, deep in thought and imagination. Your words are my own, but they belong to one and only. Yet, in me, you always saw a legacy, even if I've suffered so much tragedy. Is it because, like you, I say and believe that by giving, loving, and living, that's when you truly live. How can I see what you've seen and walk where you've been? On and on goes another day, which only you can bring alive. That's part of why you're worthy of so much respect and honor, a king forever. Is that why you gave me this ring, in which I'm named after? Now I'm the one who's deep in thought and imagination, trying to figure out and find some self-satisfaction, serenity, and a calm spirit. Who could possibly be you? Before we all know it, I'll start going to people and begin saying to them, only by giving, loving, and living, that's when you truly live. That way, I and everyone I say it to will always and forever remember you and your journey of many emotions and motion, deep in thought and imagination. I love you, Poppy.
Hi everyone, I'm Mitch. Thank you for coming today. Hugely appreciated by my mom, Marla, Carrie, and the rest of our family. Growing up, my dad told me that I could be anything I want if I would put the work in. And as a little boy, I wanted to be a baseball player. And then many of you know, as a teenager, I wanted to be a rock star. And then the first time I held Marika, I realized that I only want to be one thing for the rest of my life. Him. My dad taught me everything about life. Values, friendship, family, dreaming big, flying above the clouds. But most importantly, my dad taught me everything about love. You see, my dad believed in me long before it was worthy. And he saw something in me that I could never see in myself. And whenever I was struggling, I would talk to him, and he would say the same thing every single time. He would say, I love you, and you will figure this out. You will figure out the answer. And that taught me the secret to parenting, which is love and belief. And it was always as simple as that. To be a great parent, love and belief conquers all. My dad loved me and Marla with every part of his soul. And then he and my mom had a love affair that lasts forever. And then, if it's possible to love more than that, my dad poured every ounce of his being into these 6 kids. And this once upon a time magic happened, but it was real life. It wasn't a fairy tale. I remember sitting at a poker table once, and someone that I've never met before asks if I'm Mitch Kroll. And I'm thinking that I'm about to have a find-a-way conversation, and this person knows me from business, and I say, yes, I'm Mitch. And he asks, how's my daughter's acting going in California? And I immediately say, oh, so you know my mom and dad. He went on to ask about Griff's guitar, and Marika's wedding, and Brad's baseball, and Rob and Todd in college. Because if you knew my dad, you knew everything about all 6 kids, who then became 8, because he loved Adam and Alan like he was their own. You know, when our kids are young and we're going to those activities, seems like nonstop, right? Day after day, week after week, our kids are all busy. We can't catch our breath. Well, and then when you're there, there's all the parents and there's 1 or 2 grandparents sitting there. That was my dad. He never missed an event. For all 6 of these kids, big or small, week after week after week, year after year, this guy was there every single time. As in every single time he was there. My dad loved baseball. He coached all my teams when I was a kid, and he was a very, very proud Jew. And those two worlds collided for my dad. Last year when Brad pitched for Team Israel, my dad would go nowhere without his Team Israel jacket. And then when Brad got called up to the bigs, my dad was there in a wheelchair to see his first game. And he was so proud. But the greatest part about my dad was that he valued every accomplishment by every kid exactly the same. You'd think Brad's journey would have been his dream come true as a proud Jew who loved baseball, but to my dad it was the same for all the kids. The first time Roxanna was on TV for all of 10 seconds, it was the greatest 10 seconds of television history to my dad. He loved when Griffin would write lyrics, and you see how profound Griffin is with his thoughts, and that Griffin would not share those with anyone until Poppy heard him first. And I remember my dad calling me the morning after Marika and Alan's wedding, and he had tears of joy, and he said that somehow he felt that their wedding was a tribute to him and my mom. And it was. You see, when it came to the grandkids, it never mattered what it was. It just mattered that it was. I remember one of our final meetings with Dr. Gilligan, an amazing doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, our last family meeting, when we were stopping treatment, and my dad said to the doctor, he said, "I'm afraid." And the doctor said, "What are you afraid of?" And I knew exactly, word for word, I could have said it, mouthed it with him, what he was going to say. I'm afraid of missing out on my grandkids' lives. When we think about people who changed the world, we think about historical figures or we think about celebrity. But my dad changed the world through love. And he leaves behind a legacy of love that will live on forever in the Kroll lineage forever. And that's the greatest lesson for us all. Because we all have that power. Dad, I love you forever. You will always be the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. This is my prayer to you, my God. Let not my spirit wither and shrivel in its thirst for you, and lose the dew with which you sprinkled it when I was young. May my heart be open to every broken soul, to orphaned life, to every stumbler wandering unknown and groping in the shadow. Bless my eyes, purify me to see humanity's beauty rise in the world, and the glory of my people in its redeemed land, spreading its fragrance over all the earth. Deepen and broaden my senses to absorb a fresh, green, flowering world, to take from it the secret of blossoming in silence. There's a lot of love here today. Guess it all started with you, Bev. Larry met you at the young age of 8 years old. 8 years old. Larry and Bev's parents and families were very active at Beth Am Temple long before the synagogue closed its doors and B'nai Yeshurun took over its history. And I think I saw Cantor Schiffman here kind of representing that legacy, that old legacy on Washington Boulevard just around the corner. Beth Am Temple, it's where it all started for Larry and Bev, just around the corner. When the mothers met, they concluded that they would one day become machatanim. 8 years old the kids were. They would become in-laws to each other. All of this made no sense to Bev, who remained incredulous to the idea that she would end up with Larry, up until, it seemed, the very moment they got engaged. That all said, one thing Bev knew for sure is that Larry was her best friend. She was his support, his rock, his life, and he eventually became hers. Even when Larry had his paper route as a youngster, Bev organized the business end of things by being his first financial consultant. It became clear to Bev that he needed some help with that financial organization. She became his partner long before she was his romantic partner. When Larry enlisted in the Korean War, he asked Bev to marry her, but the problem was that she had, as was said, many other suitors. Moreover, she only found out through her aunt that he had proposed. At that point, she figured it was a done deal and decided to go along with it. While she may have not initially pegged Larry to be the man she would spend the rest of her life with, she knew he was a good man. He was compassionate, kind, a gentleman, and she observed that he was remarkably good to other people. He always would say, "Whatever you need, no questions asked." And importantly, Larry worshipped the ground on which Bev walked. She knew she had it good, agreed to marry him. And as was common to newly married soldiers, Larry sent money home in anticipation of the life they would lead after the war. Their life together started at the Tudor Arms Hotel when Larry arrived home, but they soon moved in with Bev's parents, whom Larry regarded as a second set of parents, perhaps even a first at times. When it came to bury Bev's mom, he said, "I'm burying my mother today." And then they bought the house on Marnell. Marla came first, and then Mitch. Marla was Daddy's little girl, and he was her best friend, her rock, the guy who introduced her to sports, particularly football, when the two would gear up in Arctic Cleveland temperatures to see the Browns play with garbage bags on their feet to shut out the frigid air. Mitch learned so much from his dad, his work ethic, that you work for what you earn and you get out of something what you put into it, that you should always be present in the moment, never compromise your integrity. Mitch recalled how he always thought he came from great privilege. After all, he and Marla were raised with everything and anything they needed. Later on, he realized that his parents were no richer in wealth than anyone else he knew. He realized that while the home in which he was raised may not have been filled with material wealth of infinite value, it was bursting with infinite love. Those days provided a foundation of goodness for Marla and Mitch to share with their own children, who would become precious grandchildren to Larry and Bev. Brad and Rob and Todd, Marika and Alan, Roxana and Adam and Griffin. Yes, indeed, Mitch, he had 8 grandchildren, for sure. And you have 5 children. All of his grandchildren hold precious memories of Papa, of Poppy. Those special days when you would spend individual time with him doing whatever you choose, whatever you wanted. His life was lovingly intertwined with yours. That meant theater plays, maybe even renting a bus to see Roxanna in a play in Akron, the whole family coming down en masse. Dance recitals, baseball games, football games, big events or small, it didn't matter. Papa made it a point to be there. And if you were only featured for 2 minutes, he stayed there for the whole thing, even if it was 3 to 4 hours. Things that perhaps Mitch and Marla could not imagine staying through for their children, their father had no problems with it. It was never a burden. It was never an inconvenience. It was part of his life. He did not wish to be anywhere else. And of course, there were the food celebrations afterwards, as if the kids had just won an Academy Award or a sports championship. The winter vacations in Florida found Poppy up in the early hours of the morning so he could fetch bagels and donuts for his grandkids, knowing exactly which varieties and flavors each one of you preferred. He knew each one of you individually. He looked forward to these days when you came to Florida more than anything. And Bev made sure to clear the schedule of all their activities with friends because family time was paramount. The friends would just have to understand. Sometimes they didn't, sometimes they did. But what they understood was what family meant to you. And Poppy was more than just a grandparent to the kids. He was their friend, the person who provided a specialness, a wholeness to every moment. Rob mentioned how Larry had a calming effect on the family. He seemed to understand what the moment always needed. Sometimes patience, sometimes a joke. Sometimes it was the unconditional love of dropping everything to take care of his granddaughter. Indeed, when Roxana moved out to California, it was Larry who helped get her settled in a new city, acclimate to a new life. One time, Bev called him on the phone when he was out there. "What are you doing, Larry?" "I'm scrubbing the floors. I'm scrubbing Roxana's floors." "Larry, you never do that at home." Bev learned that there were different categories of relationships and that his domestic world and life and abilities would be exercised with his grandchildren only. This was Larry doing what needed to be done because there would be nothing more important than supporting his kids, all of them. And that's how it was with Brad and his journey to the major leagues. Last year, just as things were starting to come to fruition with the White Sox, it was Poppy and Ami who provided the inspiration for Brad to play for Israel in the World Baseball Classic. Yes, the whole family took the trip to Coney Island for these play-in games, and Team Israel played for that right to represent the Jewish people in Tokyo. Impossibly, Team Israel made it, with Brad's help, of course. And Brad would later say that it was the best professional experience of his life. He did it because he wanted to make Poppy and Ami proud. Each grandchild, they can tell you their story, and they have one. Many. How Papa made them each feel as if they were more special than anyone else in the world. "Griffin, you were the best. And so were your sibs, and so were your cousins." Oh, there was more than one best. He had lots of room in his heart for the best. And you each knew that, and you also each cherished that special relationship that you had. You knew was unique to you. He had this incredible ability to zero in on the gifts and interests of each one of you, as if you each had a secret language, an understanding. That was true for his biological grandchildren and for the children that would come along later. I'm talking about Marika's Alan, Roxana's Adam. Alan lost his grandparents at an early age, and Poppy filled that void beautifully, making him feel valued, becoming a dear friend. Alan recalled a pickup soccer game that he was playing one day. Somehow, some way, Larry shows up for this inconsequential soccer game that his Alan would be playing in. Adam, as he shared, looked forward to those visits in Florida and Cleveland. Yes, Adam, you were instantly welcomed into Larry's special tribe. You said Poppy was the opposite of an old person, as society sometimes dictates. And when Larry and Bev were not with the grandkids, they spent good times with their friends playing bridge and poker, canasta, socializing with great vigor. Larry and Bev were always fun to be around, and family and friends events often found Larry playing the role of MC. He had a strength of character, a strength of spirit that were uncommon, and everyone who knew him found it simply endearing. That strength was also apparent physically when in his final days he refused to succumb to his cancer. For 8 days he lived and breathed without drinking or eating. And thankfully, that juncture of time allowed just about every family member to say goodbye to Poppy. Goodbye to Papa. The home hospice workers made him feel comfortable. And one by one, all the family pressed themselves into his small room to have one last gathering with the man who spent his life teaching them all how to live, how to love. How fitting for all he gave to you that you gave this moment to him. What more could he have wanted than to be surrounded by those who were the most important beings in his world? These special moments of last breaths. He took these weakened breaths. Mitch, Carrie, and Marla were all able to say, "I love you, Dad." And his grandchildren, one by one, shared one last special moment with their Poppy, with their Papa, as he labored to continue to breathe. One last moment. Words didn't need to be said. They were so felt. And then the family patriarch breathed his last breath, perhaps expelling his amazing spirit for everyone to grasp and hold and cherish. It's what we're doing right now. He exhaled one last time. And while the body that he lived in might be gone, his spirit is so palpably here in this moment, there is no question that he lives on. Isn't that what the greatest people do? The best, the greatest, they live on. Simply put, Papa Kroll was the greatest. Or as his sports-loving dear ones would put it, and Mitch already did, using that ever-popular acronym, he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Zichrono livracha. May Larry's memory forever be an enduring blessing, and let us say, Amen. Let's take a moment as we just consider all that Larry brought to this world. If you are able, please rise. As we continue the chanting of El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Bemalot Kiddushim Utorim, Kezor Rakia Mazirim, Et Nishmat Leibo ben David Shalach Leholamo, Began Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana Bala Rachamim, Hastirehu, Beseter Kanafecha Leholamim, Utzror Bitzror Achayim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Unachalato, Ve'yanuach Beshalom al Mishkavo, Ve'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of our dear Larry Kroll, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. As we turn to the conclusion of our service, we will move from here to Zion Memorial Cemetery for the graveside burial. And then following the burial, Carrie and Mitch Kroll will be hosting Shiva at their home, 6635 Cummings Court in Solon. 6635 Cummings Court in Solon. Again, receiving after graveside services today till 6 p.m., tomorrow Saturday evening from 5 to 8 p.m., and then Sunday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Friends who wish to contribute may do so by donating to the Hospice of the Western Reserve or the Taussig Cancer Center, care of the Cleveland Clinic.